Vladimir Ilyich Lenin. 1 step forward, 2 steps back. The Crisis in Our Party, published May 1904. A few words on dialectics. 2 revolutions. A general glance at the development of our party crisis will readily show that in the main, with minor exceptions, the composition of the two contending sides remained unchanged throughout. It was a struggle between the revolutionary wing and the opportunist wing in our party. But this struggle passed through the most varied stages, and anyone who wants to find his bearings in the vast amount of literature already accumulated, the massive fragmentary evidence, passages torn from their context, isolated accusations, and so on and so forth, must thoroughly familiarize himself with the peculiarities of each of these stages. Let us enumerate the principal and clearly distinct stages. 1. The controversy over paragraph 1 of the rules. A purely ideological struggle over the basic principles of organization. Plekhanov and I are in the minority. Martov and Axelrod propose an opportunist formulation and find themselves in the arms of the opportunists. 2. The split in the Iskra organization over the lists of candidates for the Central Committee, Fomin or Vasilyev in a committee of 5, Trotsky or Travinsky in a committee of 3. Plekhanov and I gain the majority, 9-7, partly because of the very fact that we were in the minority on paragraph 1. Martov's coalition with the opportunists confirmed my worst fears over the organizing committee incident. 3. Continuation of the controversy over details of the rules. Martov is again saved by the opportunists. We are again in the minority and fight for the rights of the minority on the central bodies. 4. The 7 extreme opportunists withdraw from the Congress. We become the majority and defeat the coalition, the Iskra-ist minority, the Marsh, and the anti-Iskrists, in the elections. Martov and Popov decline to accept seats in our trios. 5. The post-Congress squabble over co-optation. An orgy of anarchistic behavior and anarchistic phrase-mongering. The least stable and steadfast elements among the minority gain the upper hand. 6. To avert a split, Plekhanov adopts the policy of killing with kindness. The minority occupy the editorial board of the central organ and the council and attack the central committee with all their might. The squabble continues to pervade everything. 7. First attack on the central committee repulsed. The squabble seems to be subsiding somewhat. It becomes possible to discuss in comparative calm 2 purely ideological questions which profoundly agitate the party. A. What is the political significance and explanation of the division of our party into majority and minority which took shape at the Second Congress and superseded all earlier divisions? B. What is the significance in principle of the new Iskra's new position on the question of organization? In each of these stages the circumstances of the struggle and the immediate object of the attack are materially different. Each stage is, as it were, a separate battle in one general military campaign. Our struggle cannot be understood at all unless the concrete circumstances of each battle are studied. But once that is done, we see clearly that development does indeed proceed dialectically, by way of contradictions. The minority becomes the majority, and the majority becomes the minority. Each side passes from the defensive to the offensive, and from the offensive to the defensive. The starting point of ideological struggle, paragraph 1, is negated and gives place to an all-pervading squabble. 1. The difficult problem of drawing a line between squabbling and differences of principle now solves itself. All that relates to co-optation is squabbling. All that relates to analysis of the struggle at the Congress, to the controversy over paragraph 1 and the swing towards opportunism and anarchism is a difference of principle. Lenin. But then begins the negation of the negation, and, having just about managed to rub along with our God-given wife on different central bodies, we return to the starting point, the purely ideological struggle, but by now this thesis has been enriched by all the results of the antithesis and has become a higher synthesis, in which the isolated, random error over paragraph 1 has grown into a quasi-system of opportunist views on matters of organization, and in which the connection between this fact and the basic division of our party into a revolutionary and an opportunist wing becomes increasingly apparent to all. In a word, not only do oats grow according to Hegel, but the Russian Social Democrats war among themselves according to Hegel. But the great Hegelian dialectics which Marxism made its own, having first turned it right side up, must never be confused with the vulgar trick of justifying the zigzags of politicians who swing over from the revolutionary to the opportunist wing of the party, with the vulgar habit of lumping together particular statements, and particular developmental factors, belonging to different stages of a single process. Genuine dialectics does not justify the errors of individuals, but studies the inevitable turns, proving that they were inevitable by a detailed study of the process of development in all its concreteness. One of the basic principles of dialectics is that there is no such thing as abstract truth, truth is always concrete. And, one thing more, the great Hegelian dialectics should never be confused with that vulgar worldly wisdom so well expressed by the Italian saying, "Mettila la coda dove non va il capo," sticking in the tail where the head will not go through. The outcome of the dialectical development of our party struggle has been 2 revolutions. The party congress was a real revolution, as Comrade Martov justly remarked in his Once More in the Minority. The wits of the minority are also right when they say, the world moves through revolutions. Well, we have made a revolution. They did indeed make a revolution after the Congress, and it is true, too, that generally speaking the world does move through revolutions. But the concrete significance of each concrete revolution is not defined by this general aphorism. There are revolutions which are more like reaction, to paraphrase the unforgettable expression of the unforgettable Comrade Makeoff. We must know whether it was the revolutionary or the opportunist wing of the party that was the actual force that made the revolution, must know whether it was revolutionary or opportunist principles that inspired the fighters, before we can determine whether a particular concrete revolution moved the world, our party, forward or backward. Our party congress was unique and unprecedented in the entire history of the Russian revolutionary movement. For the first time a secret revolutionary party succeeded in emerging from the darkness of underground life into broad daylight, showing everyone the whole course and outcome of our internal party struggle, the whole character of our party and of each of its more or less noticeable components in matters of program, tactics, and organization. For the first time, we succeeded in throwing off the traditions of circle looseness and revolutionary Philistinism, in bringing together dozens of very different groups, many of which had been fiercely warring among themselves and had been linked solely by the force of an idea, and which were now prepared, in principle, that is, to sacrifice all their group aloofness and group independence for the sake of the great whole which we were for the first time actually creating, the party. But in politics sacrifices are not obtained gratis, they have to be won in battle. The battle over the slaughter of organizations necessarily proved terribly fierce. The fresh breeze of free and open struggle blew into a gale. The gale swept away, and a very good thing that it did! Each and every remnant of all circle interests, sentiments, and traditions without exception, and for the first time created genuinely party institutions. But it is one thing to call oneself something, and another to be it. It is one thing to sacrifice the circle system in principle for the sake of the party, and another to renounce one's own circle. The fresh breeze proved too fresh as yet for people used to musty Philistinism. The party was unable to stand the strain of its first Congress, as Comrade Martov rightly put it, inadvertently, in his Once More in the Minority. The sense of injury over the slaughter of organizations was too strong. The furious gale raised all the mud from the bottom of our party stream, and the mud took its revenge. The old hidebound circle spirit overpowered the still young party spirit. The opportunist wing of the party, rooted though it had been, got the better, temporarily, of course, of the revolutionary wing, having been reinforced by Akimov's accidental gain. The result is the new Iskra, which is compelled to develop and deepen the error its editors committed at the party congress. The old Iskra taught the truths of revolutionary struggle. The new Iskra teaches the worldly wisdom of yielding and getting on with everyone. The old Iskra was the organ of militant orthodoxy. The new Iskra treats us to a recrudescence of opportunism, chiefly on questions of organization. The old Iskra earned the honor of being detested by the opportunists, both Russian and West European. The new Iskra has grown wise and will soon cease to be ashamed of the praises lavished on it by the extreme opportunists. The old Iskra marched unswervingly towards its goal, and there was no discrepancy between its word and its deed. The inherent falsity of the new Iskra's position inevitably leads, independently even of anyone's will or intention, to political hypocrisy. It inveighs against the circle spirit in order to conceal the victory of the circle spirit over the party spirit. It hypocritically condemns splits, as if one can imagine any way of avoiding splits in any at all organized party except by the subordination of the minority to the majority. It says that heed must be paid to revolutionary public opinion, yet, while concealing the praises of the Akimovs, indulges in petty scandal-mongering about the committees of the revolutionary wing of the party. 2. A stereotyped form has even been worked out for this charming pastime. Our special correspondent X informs us that Committee Y of the majority has behaved badly to Comrade Z of the minority. Lenin, how shameful! How they have disgraced our old Iskra. 1 step forward, 2 steps back. It happens in the lives of individuals, and it happens in the history of nations and in the development of parties. It would be the most criminal cowardice to doubt even for a moment the inevitable and complete triumph of the principles of revolutionary social democracy, of proletarian organization and party discipline. We have already won a great deal, and we must go on fighting, undismayed by reverses, fighting steadfastly, scorning the Philistine methods of circle wrangling, doing our very utmost to preserve the hard-won single-party tie linking all Russian Social Democrats, and striving by dint of persistent and systematic work to give all party members, and the workers in particular, a full and conscious understanding of the duties of party members, of the struggle at the Second Party Congress, of all the causes and all the stages of our divergence, and of the utter disastrousness of opportunism, which, in the sphere of organization as in the sphere of our program and our tactics, helplessly surrenders to the bourgeois psychology, uncritically adopts the point of view of bourgeois democracy, and blunts the weapon of the class struggle of the proletariat. In its struggle for power, the proletariat has no other weapon but organization. Disunited by the rule of anarchic competition in a bourgeois world, ground down by forced labor for capital, constantly thrust back to the lower depths of utter destitution, savagery, and degeneration, the proletariat can, and inevitably will, become an invincible force only through its ideological unification on the principles of Marxism being reinforced by the material unity of organization, which welds millions of toilers into an army of the working class. Neither the senile rule of the Russian autocracy nor the senescent rule of international capital will be able to withstand this army. It will more and more firmly close its ranks, in spite of all zigzags and backward steps, in spite of the opportunist phrase-mongering of the girondists of present-day social democracy, in spite of the self-satisfied exaltation of the retrograde circle spirit, and in spite of the tinsel and fuss of intellectualist anarchism.